Okay, good evening to you, Dr. Dan. Hello.
Yes.
And
Good evening.
yeah, and it's morning here in Japan, but same time everywhere, I guess. Uh, anyway,
Yeah.
today, I guess our topic or issue is we'd just like to add more depth and expand on some of the points we made. I think we felt kind of constrained by the time limits of Zoom, but I'd just like to let you go ahead and address any points you feel like you'd like to um, fill out, give more description, explanation for the viewers. So take the floor.
Okie doke. In regards to Wayne, one of the things that I learned from him was also how this trance business works. And I think if people could understand some of these finer points, they would be a little bit more respectful to what they hear. Uh, and one of these is that what I said in the previous session is that it takes a while for Wayne to go under, and I've noticed this with other people that enter trance sessions. You don't just pop right into a session. It might take 5 minutes. It might take 10 minutes. And the spiritual beings in a trance session, they take over the medium's body, and we're listening to their words, which, by the way, we did a thing, an authorship thing on Wayne. And
All right.
we did the authorship on Wayne and some of his writings and compared them to his trance message. And the conclusion is that it was two different people.
Right.
So there was someone else controlling Wayne's thought process, let's put it that way.
Right.
Now,
I just want to interject really quickly.
go ahead.
There's some, I actually have I think I still have the reports of that. I did a linguistic comparison between the books that Wayne has written and the trance messages that we got through him. And the separation was clear that the same person who wrote the trance medium messages and Wayne's own writings were completely two different people. I'm going to sort of browse around. I didn't know this was the topic, so I probably could find it. I'm going to try to find it while you're talking. Maybe if I can find it before the session ends, I'll show it. But anyway,
Okay.
just it was linguistic software, and it's very accurate. And anyway, so definitely Wayne did not just on his own write these trance mediums messages over.
I think that's very important because it is some tangible proof that we have someone coming through in these messages. A person still doesn't have to necessarily believe it,
Mm-hmm.
but there's enough proof there now that a person should at least say, well, maybe,
Right.
you know. Now, one of the points that I had wanted to make in this session here, though, was that we only have like about 20 minutes to an outside of 40 minutes in a trance session. And for some reason, this runs down the energy in the trance medium's body, so they can't do it any longer. So most of the messages were around 20 minutes. And so they would come to us with a preordained message to give to us. In other words, they weren't asking us questions. We were allowed to ask them questions, but they wouldn't answer any of our personal questions. And this is a little bit more further proof. We were told not to ask personal questions, And after, I don't know, 30 or 40 of these trance sessions, I just happened to, just out of curiosity, to ask what was going on with my deceased brother. And that was the end of that. They didn't go one letter past that. And Wayne woke up, just snapped right out of the trance session, which he's never done before. And he said, "What's going on? What happened?" And I said, "Well, I made a mistake and asked a personal question." And that stopped the trance session. So I learned my lesson. But now, since the beings can only do a 20, 30-minute trance session, they have to speak very concisely. They can't elaborate on things, so that they most of the things that they give us are more phrases than they are a sentence. And so they aren't able to add that detail, and people get a little turned off by that fact that, well, what do you mean by that? Well, they can't take that time to do it. And that's also another way that you can tell a fraudulent trance medium, is that they will go ahead and ramble on and pretend that they are answering your questions when actually they can't.
May I interrupt you just to add one more point? And yeah, and is definitely, there are frauds, and definitely you should always be careful what you hear, not only because they're frauds and they're just trying to take your money or want your applause or something, but also we are told by our common sense and by the words in Oahspe itself that we should not trust the words of a spirit or angel from the other world more than we would any other person that we met in our life. So just because this message is coming through in a real trance medium, it doesn't mean you have to accept everything. You have to think about what they're saying and use your common sense, and you should always go by your own inner voice and your own inner logic, and not just accept things as true just because you hear them through a psychic trance medium. Over.
Yes, that's correct. And I almost take everything I come across in my life with the position that, well, that's interesting. I like that thought, and I'll say that, indicate that I believe it, but I still put it to the test down the road when possible. And it's one of the things I suggest to anyone getting into psychic work. They have to be very careful. And the lower the psychic, in other words, the so-called psychics themselves deal with the very lowest spiritual beings that are still hanging around on the face of the earth. And so they don't usually give you any information, and they try to answer questions about your personal business, family relations, and so on. And they just make stuff up sometimes just to keep you going. So you have to be real careful about the low-level psychics. I wasted a lot of money on psychics in the beginning, and I wouldn't waste another penny on a psychic. Wayne never charged for his sessions or the information that he got. He never made any money at it. But incidentally, let me digress into a funny story. Wayne was telling me that early on he was doing psychic things and doing psychic readings, and he liked to use the tea leaves. I never had much faith in that at all. But he said one day his son came home and told his mama, and he said, "Mama, you got to stop Daddy from having these ladies come into our house and go upstairs in Dad's bedroom and have him paying him $25."
Okay. Guess that is funny. By the way, I found the analysis of Wayne's
All
writing.
right.
Can you see my screen at all? You probably,
No, all I can see is you.
okay. I'm going to try to do the share screen again.
Uh,
It comes through. Tell me if you see. Yeah, why wouldn't it? Anyway, it says it's working, but you cannot see Wayne's. I'm showing right now the software analysis, the authorship analysis. Can you see it? I think
no,
no.
no.
Okay, I don't know what it's something to do with Zoom today because it says share screen, but oh wait, it's coming now. I just had to push the button one more time.
Yeah.
Okay, so here it is. Basically, I took a book that Wayne Sturgeon wrote, and it was like over 100 pages. And I also took the trance writings, which was also over 100 pages. And the analysis looks at all the vocabulary, the grammar, the syntax, and other linguistic qualities. And it does an analysis to see, is there any similarities where you could say, well, there are authorship traits that match this. Can you see it yet? Yeah,
Uh,
okay. Maybe now
no, it's loading.
okay. Well, anyway, the book of Wayne's trance writings was called Wayne Sturgeon Trance Session. You can see it at the top.
Yes.
And and the other one is a book by Wayne called Betrayed. And it grouped all the writings. It does sort of an intertextual comparison as well. So you'll see the only ones that came together were when the trance sessions stayed together, and you can see the betrayed stay together, and they were not combined. So they looked at 4 different chunks of writings for the betrayed, and looked at 2 different chunks for the trance sessions, and they all stayed together. Um, I've done a similar thing with Dr. Newbrough's writings and Oahspe's writings, and uh, there were cases where the books did come together. Some of the books of Oahspe, such as Safaf and Jehovah's Kingdom on Earth, they show authorship by John Newbrough, and I'm not going to get into that today. But if the software would show if they were by the same author, they would have those branches together. They'd be listed together, and that's not the case. So this is just some evidence that, like as you're saying, some proof that it was on the up and up over.
Well, I think this is a very good idea, this authorship software. And it does lend a lot of credence to the correctness of Wayne's trance sessions, that we were getting this from someone else, which I knew that from the very beginning. I could just tell the level of intelligence in the trance sessions was just way above Wayne. I'm not saying that Wayne was stupid or dumb or anything like that, but he was uneducated, so he did not have the vocabulary to do some of this writing. So to say that he falsified all this stuff and made it up, there's just no way. He just wasn't capable of that.
Very good.
Over.
Yeah, I think, and what I'm showing now is the software analysis I did on John Newbrough's, and it has some explanation of how the software works. It's totally scientific, and it's giving you right now you see parts of speech, punctuation, sentence density, lemmas, trigrams, expression word combinations. And I tried the software out on like real authors, that are famous, and I took different writings of theirs. Like I took like a dozen books between these some famous authors, and then they then said, okay, which of these were written by which authors, and it put uh, the right authors together. It had uh, uh, Lewis Carroll books, and then I had Robert Louis Stevenson, Jack London. It grouped them all in correctly. So I proved that it works. First, that's this proved. See the colors? I have them color coded here. So it actually put books written by these famous authors together, and it worked. And then I took books by John Newbrough. In this case, he wrote some very long books before John Newbrough was a trance medium for Oahspe. He wrote other books such as Lady of the West, The Fall of Fort Sumner, and so I took real writings that he wrote, and then I took all the books from Oahspe, this list, and then I did the analysis, ran the analysis, and it put, you'll see in black, these are all, this is what Newbrough wrote, and the parts of, so some of the Oahspe did end up being shown to be, I'm trying to get it a little more magnified, maybe just a little more. So this is not what happened with Wayne. There was a clear distinction between the writings. But in the case of Oahspe, the writings were divided into three groups, and all of Newbrough's original writings, like The Fall of Fort Sumner and The Lady of the West, and Kindergarten Homes for Orphans, that he also wrote that. Question and Answers from Spiritualists, that's a book he wrote as about trance mediumship and his own direct experiences of that. And The Castaway was a periodical he put out when he had Shalom going in New Mexico. And he also wrote The Guide to the Voice and Will of Jehovah, which is something he wrote at Shalom, or prior to Shalom, for as guidelines for the community to live together under. But there were books such as Jehovah's Kingdom on Earth and Safa. Those both, none other. And what I'm showing now is the software analysis I did on John Newbrough's, and it has some explanation of how the software works. It's totally scientific, and it's giving you the, right now you see. So anyway, I just want to show you that the software does make distinctions, and again, that's probably a topic for another video, but anyway, Wayne's, in contrast, Wayne's, if we look at Wayne's, they fell together. The trance sessions came in the same group, and Betrayed fell into two groups, but it was still with Betrayed. The colors are the same because I didn't put color coded on this. I wasn't expecting to show it to anybody other than you, but anyway, so anyway, it did come out that way, that it was all in the up and up. Over.
Yeah, that's real interesting. And when a person stops to think about this, even in my own case, I know a lot of vocabulary words, but when I write, I only use a few of those words. And I'm not real good at punctuation. So we all have these little characteristics that, and I think this is a great information. I think this kind of software would be good for museums and things where they have historical things and they're trying to determine if they are legitimate or whether they're forgeries. So whoever's doing this, I hope they keep it up. I think it's a great idea.
Right. Linguistics is relatively, especially scientific authorship, linguistic software is relatively new. It's only been in the last 15 years that it's been developed. So this could not have been done like in the 1970s or the 1990s. It just wasn't ready. But it's only been the last 10, 15 years that this has been developed. And it's anyway, glad it's developed now, and it can be used to show how true trance medium produced text is. You would expect, you would hope, you want that the original author's writing should not resemble the trance medium text, because that would show that there was some type of shenanigans going on. But overall, we still have to keep in mind that no matter what comes through a trance medium, as far as text or words, we have to use our own judgment and go on our own inspiration and logic. We shouldn't just blindly accept it, but at least we have to, it's good to confirm that this is a true trance mediumship. Over.
Right. So
I
yeah,
kind of interrupted your thoughts about the trance mediumship. Is there anything else you want to say about trance mediumship or about the channeling that Wayne did in New Mexico?
no, the sessions that Wayne had in New Mexico at the Global Council, we had 3 trance sessions that the attendees themselves listened to it, and we had about 42 people there that witnessed this. But the night before the first session, Wayne had an out-of-body experience. And in this out-of-body experience, he saw Dr. Newbrough. And he was very puzzled by it, because Newbrough was being kept in a long or very tall cylinder-like room. And we don't know what that meant at all. And Newbrough was trying to get out. And finally, because Newbrough was able to, or the elders were able to give a message from Newbrough, it released Newbrough so that he could leave that structure. And he was very grateful, because he'd been in there for many years. And it was said that Newbrough's followers that passed on into the spiritual realm, that they wound up forming 6 separate little Oahspe heavens. And at the time, they were in the process of dismantling those little heavens. So,
And yes, may I say a little bit? Basically, with our thoughts, heavens arise. So whatever your thoughts, whatever your spiritual path, if it's Buddhism, if it's Islam, if it's Christianity, or if it's some subsect of those religions or New Age, you tend to go towards the realms where your mind has an affinity with that. And in the case of the people who had that going with the different sects of Oahspe, those heavens formed because those people had similar beliefs about Oahspe and wanted to work together in that particular way. Over.
yes, that's correct. But much later on, we found out that the kind of add some explanation to that. We found out that in the future there will be no religion, and so the statement that they were in the process of dismantling those heavens is right on the mark.
Yeah, that's the
So,
goal. That's the goal, and that's the goal, isn't it? That we should uh, become more universal in our approach to spirituality. And Oahspe, even though it emphasized that is that's what should happen, because of Newbrough's mistakes with Masonic path and in putting that into Oahspe, some of the readers of Oahspe have also been led down the wrong path. And so that's why these non-universal heavenly areas for Oahspe readers were thereby were created. Newbrough made a mistake, and so that's why he was bound, because he wasn't working to set these people free from those limiting ideas. Over.
yes, and the spiritual beings are very cryptic in their advice. Uh, Incidentally, talking about advice, uh, we were told at one point that the spiritual beings are tired of doing parlor tricks in order to try to convince people that they exist. So that's why there's been very little trance effort or trance work done the last 20 years or so. And now what we were told is that they wanted to instruct us, not force us or coerce us into some belief. And so some of the things, and for example, they would say, you've got two ways of thinking. You can think from your brain or you can think from your heart. And the problem is thinking from your heart, that's not connected to the creator. And so therefore your heart can lie to you, but your brain will always tell you the truth. As long as you get your mind clear and open to new information, it'll come to you. And then as far as the spiritual, our relationships to our fellow person is, I think the latest thing I read the other day was one of the things that mankind could do that would give him so much relief is to just simply stop lying. And then that's all they say. And that leaves you kind of, well, what do you mean lying? And then one of them will say, well, you figure it out. You see?
It's funny.
And if you stop and think about it, yeah, and then we got these great big lies, or we got little lies from between a husband and a wife, or a boss and a worker. And it's very difficult to be completely honest. Now, in the spiritual realm, you can't lie because they can read your mind. So if you come up with a nasty thought, they'll simply walk away from you and leave you standing there with egg on your face.
Right. You're talking about the higher beings who
Yes.
have worked for the good of others and for the good of the world and the heavens. But of course, the lower beings, lies, the lower you go, the more lies there are. And you might say, well, what's the problem with the lie? Well, anything that's not the truth has error in it, and selfishness and deception, and things don't work quite as well when you're lying. Think about any relationship you have with anybody. If you can't trust someone, and if the words that are coming out are not true, you're not going to work well together. You're going to end up having a lot of different negative emotions going on, and that's what's happening in our world today. Our society has become overrun with lies through the mainstream media and through the internet, and through our leaders, most of all. And I'm not going to start doing a political analysis, but I think we can tell that, is the world getting better, or is it getting more dangerous and combative? And I think we know the answer to that is it is, and it's because of bad intentions and because of not telling the truth. And anyway, over.
Okay. Yes. The other concept that is very important too is whatever inner reactions we have with our fellow person, we should think about that as if kind of ask ourselves in our own mind, now, what should I do here if I were the creator? How would I react to this person? Should I help them out? Should I give them money? Should I give them advice? Or should I tell them to get the heck out of here? You know, and these things are really so very simple. And if we put them all together, well, we would stop all these problems. And if these people would listen to the higher beings, and like in the case of Putin now, starting this war,
Okay.
he has seriously, created enemies, and he doesn't he thinks everything will go out like a candle when he dies, so it's not going to be any problem. But when he dies and here's all these people waiting on him for revenge, he wouldn't have done any of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'd also like to mirror the same idea. The leaders of the West, whether it's the United States, France, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, those guys are also throwing a lot of lies out there, and they've got wars and oppression going on. They're part of why the war is happening in Ukraine and the oppression that's going on in those countries, and they're using lies all the time to justify their selfishness, their desire to control others, as ultimately to make them their slaves, or at least to destroy their enemies who do not want to be controlled over.
Right. So that was my big breakthrough, was when I realized that no, this spiritual business is not that difficult at all. It's really very, very simple and works real good. And as long as we would work with that, with the creator, in harmony with the creator, we would reduce virtually all our problems, with the exception of being struck by lightning or something.
Yeah, that's a great. I'm glad you mentioned the creator too, because it isn't the whole point of spiritualism is not simply to communicate with spirits, hopefully the higher ones, although certainly that's a goal, just to get some knowledge and perspective on how our lives could be led better. But it's to improve our attunement with the creator, the all person, the universal spirit, who's ever present within everyone. And that's been a message of Oahspe, that the creator is the keynote. We can't really make progress until we harmonize with the creator, and through our harmonization, our attunement to the creator, the all highest, we ourselves will naturally fall in harmony and attunement with one another for greater peace and prosperity and progress. Over.
Yes, that's correct. I think one of the, or a couple of the things that cleared up my thinking quite a bit was in a channel message from another person, not Wayne, but they were discussing the universe, and they said that there were approximately 1 billion inhabited planets in this universe. So those, so we have to understand that this concept of God on this planet is totally false, and that this God had his one and only son. It's completely ridiculous when you think of
Oh yeah,
1 billion other planets, and how did all that stuff work out?
Yeah, for Christianity, that's a big that's a big logical piece of evidence that you shouldn't get so specific, because if you do, when you put all the Godhead simply in this one person or this Trinity or whatever, it's not universal anymore, and the same thing could be said of all the other religions, whether it's Islam, Buddhism, and so on. Over.
Yes. And curiously, they said that planet Earth was one of the more beautiful planets in the universe, but it was not the most beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful. And that the planet is, compared to other planets, our planet's pretty small. And let me see, there's one other thing.
I think they also said that the spiritual level of our world has not really progressed that far. It has progressed, but compared to other worlds of the same time duration, we're kind of behind schedule here. We should be doing better.
Yeah. I mean, they said that all the planets are all a little different from one to another, and some are way advanced and some are still groveling around in the darkness. And so planet Earth was an experimental planet, and they were going to experiment with freedom and let mankind have complete freedom. They said that a lot of the planets don't have that complete freedom that we have.
Yeah,
they'll run more like a cattle farm, I guess you'd say.
Maybe like a company where there's people in charge, and they give directives, and maybe there's a lot more spiritual support from the higher beings at other worlds than here. Maybe is that what you're getting to?
Yes. So it varies from one planet to another. And so we shouldn't be so conceited as to think that we're the most intelligent or the most beautiful planet in the whole universe. That's ridiculous. And so therefore, how could we have a God that at one time can be tending to